every man, every woman, every young person in this congregation, I need you to be a warrior for God. My Bible is open to Mark's Gospel, the 9th chapter. If you want to click to your iPhone or your Android, use the NIV version. That's what I'll be teaching from. And if you're using one of the blue Bibles in the chair in front of you, it's page 715. Today culminates our 3-week series that was entitled Leadership Lessons of Jesus. And I want to talk specifically now to the topic, the leader and the team, or the leader's team. When I think about leadership, Jesus comes right to mind because he was the epitome of a leader. I know that leadership is a tough task because when you deal with people, it's very messy. When you deal with shaping and molding a team to become something that's more productive, more effective, more missionally focused, it's always a bit messy. But Jesus helps us to understand the inner workings of a team. And so I want to look at verse 33, please. They, that is Jesus and his 12 disciples, they came to Capernaum. When he, that's Jesus, when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last, and the servant of all." He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." Now, there was something going on here that was very messy with the 12 disciples. It all centered around character. So whenever you deal with leadership, you always have to deal with your character. And particularly we who are followers of Jesus, everybody everywhere is always looking at Christians, and the slightest mistake you make, they try to parade Christianity through everybody's brokenness. And so there are high stakes when it comes to your behavior, your being a role model. In fact, there was a study that was done by Dr. Fred Keel, who is an executive consultant. It's a secular study where he actually surveyed hundreds of CEOs of major Fortune 500 corporations nationwide to try to understand the role of character in the success or the failure of the company. Dr. Keel came up with the term high character to speak of someone who carries himself in a morally upstanding way that's so exemplary. He contrasted high character versus low character. And Dr. Keel was able to unearth some major findings. Let me show you just 3 of them by way of just graphic. Dr. Keel says that there was actually a 5-to-1, 5 times as many financial successes, or the company performed 5 times as better when the CEO was of high character versus those of low character. So financial performance increases 5 times. Corporate risk decreases appreciably when you have someone who has high character. Employee engagement, it rose by 26 times when the person leading the company had high character. I want you to see your character plays a significant role in every sector, in every setting. I love what Charles Spurgeon, a great English preacher, said in terms of the relationship of character and our performance. Spurgeon said, "If your religion does not make you holy, it will damn you. It is simply painted pageantry to go to hell in." That's heavy words. Now, as we spend our time understanding the leader's team, may I remind you that every one of us in this room and those watching online, thanks for being a part of our community from around the world, watching and being a part of this time, every one of us has a team. Whether it's your family, whether it's your department that you work in at work, or you are one of the primary principals of that company or the owner, or you may lead a department in the community, or perhaps you lead a group on your college campus, or even in the Lord's house, you run a certain division or a certain department. Every one of us must recognize we are a leader somewhere, and we have responsibility for the team that we must lead. You know, when it comes to teamwork and team ministry, I remember what Michael Jordan said. He said, "Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships." Now, this is uncharacteristic of Michael Jordan. The reason why, he made this statement at the height of his NBA career. But when he was in college as a ball player, Coach Dean Smith said this about Michael Jordan in his freshman year at University of North Carolina. He said to Michael, "Michael, if you can't pass the ball, you can't play in the game." Because Michael was a sensational player, but he wasn't based and gifted with and skilled in teamwork. Now we're going to get a little lesson here from Jesus. And I want to reread the text again, and we want to look at it now from the lens and through the lens of being a leader on a team. And we want to ask one question: what builds the leader's team? I will provide to you 3 answers from the text. And so let's look at verse 33 again. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." Jesus had a team here. And this team that he was speaking to was a team of 12. The stakes are very high. When Jesus, after he's died, he was crucified, buried, resurrected, he goes on to sit on the right hand of the Father in heaven. Those apostles that he left behind were going to be his successors and the framework and the foundation of the Christian faith. High stakes in his team. So my question to you is, what builds a leader's team? I offer you my first answer: the conflicts. It may seem as if conflicts, problems, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm not suggesting you should walk down the street looking for problems. Neither am I suggesting you should go home and say to your wife, "Hey, we need to get into some conflicts because conflict's going to build us, make our marriage stronger." No, if that's your approach, that is ridiculous. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is that when conflicts come your way, you need to see that conflicts can play a very beneficial role in helping your team, whether the team is a family, whether the team is a team on the job or in the church, in the community. And here Jesus then recognized the conflict. Here is the conflict. They're walking on the road, and the disciples begin to argue among each other as to which one of them will be the greatest. Now, it's not weird, their argument, because first century Jews, they prided themselves in the system of honor, which really dealt with the issue of ranking. What seat of prominence should you have? Who is the most honorable among us should have the first seat. And so these guys are arguing among each other as to which one is going to be the greatest. And so Peter may have said to John, "I'm the greatest." John says, "No, no, no." James says, "Look, brother," to John, "I'm the greatest." And Thomas said, I doubt that I'm the greatest. And so you laugh when you know about Thomas. You don't know about Thomas, you don't get the joke. It's an insider joke to those who read the Bible. So you better start laughing. Fake it while you're here. You tell me later what it means. But I want you to see that these guys they're working with one another about this whole thing of this greatest piece. Bible scholars tell us that Jesus, when he walked with his disciples, oftentimes walked ahead of them. His thoughts were on his mission. His thoughts were on heavenly things. His disciples were behind him, having their earthy conversations. Such was the case here. These guys are having their little infighting. Which one of us is the greatest? And they get to the house. Notice, Jesus did not scold, reprimand, or rebuke them for arguing. Neither did he try to blame or pick out or isolate the one who initiated the argument. In other words, what we can learn from this, what builds a leader's team? The conflicts. Jesus is going to use the conflicts as something that's going to help build his team. And I want you to know that every one of us are experiencing some conflict right now, whether at home, whether in the workplace, whether in school, or even in the church. I want you to realize that. Keep in mind now, don't mess up this opportunity. Conflicts have great opportunities for team building. Notice the text lets us know in an indirect way that there are no perfect teams. Even Jesus' team was not perfect. So if you're looking around for a perfect team, you'll never find one. Even heaven, God didn't have a perfect team. He had to kick out a third of the angels when they fell and found hypocrisy and duplicity and disloyalty inside of their hearts, and they were thrown down to the earth along with Satan. So I want you to understand, it is no indictment on the team leader that the team is imperfect. Not in every instance. None of us can lay a blame at God saying your leadership style is weak or is lacking. Oh no. But I want to let you know that there are no perfect teams. So I answer the question, what builds the leader's teams? Answer, the conflicts. The conflicts. Verse 33 of Mark 9 tells us, when he was in the house, Jesus asked them, what were you arguing about on the road? They were silent. They knew what they were arguing about was not right. Nobody wanted to say anything. Just get quiet. But conflict, some people don't want to have conflicts because they think conflict's bad. No conflicts. I remember this couple, they got married, and on their honeymoon, they always wanted to go to the Grand Canyon to see it. And they just so happened to work it out with their tourist agent that they can actually go on a horseback ride down to the base of the canyon. And so they had a tour guide in the front. Wife was right behind, husband behind the wife. And here they're on the horseback, and as they're nearing the base of the canyon, the wife's horse slipped. And then the husband heard the wife mutter under her breath, but loud enough for him to hear. And she said, that's once. He didn't think anything about it. It was so strange. As they got closer to the base, the horse slipped a second time. She said, that's twice. Husband's thinking, that's crazy. When they got to the base, as soon as they got to the base of the canyon, the horse slipped a third time. And the wife said, that's 3 times. She opened up her purse, pulled out a revolver, and killed the horse. Just shot the horse, bam, right in the head. And the husband said, honey, why'd you do that? And she said to him, looked at him and said, that's once. They have never had an argument since. No conflict whatsoever because of the ramifications in that marriage of conflict. Don't be like that couple. Don't be like that wife. Conflicts can play a very good and key role in team building. And so I want us to see conflicts identifies problems and roadblocks towards your goals. Or even in relationships, it identifies roadblocks. So you got to give the opportunity for conflicts to work their way to be a beneficial benefit to you. And so conflicts give you an opportunity to share your true feelings. It gives you a perspective and opinion of a particular team member or a member of your family. I want you to see that conflicts, it can help you work towards goals so that the team becomes more productive, and the byproduct of conflict can become healthier relationships. So I want you to see conflicts play benefits. And so the question, what builds the leader's team? Answer, the conflicts. General Colin Powell said, when we're debating an issue, loyalty means giving me your honest opinion, whether you think I'll like it or not. Disagreement at this state stimulates me. But once a decision is made, the debate ends. From that point on, loyalty means executing the decision as if it were your own. Question, what builds a leader's team? Answer, the conflict. And right now, you may have a conflict going on on your team, remember, you have an awesome, awesome opportunity. It's like you're playing softball and someone lobs it to you slow, and your bat is this wide, this thick. You can't miss it. That's what you need to do when you deal with the conflict. So I raised the question, what builds a leader's team? I provide the answer, the conflict. But let me provide a second answer, because that first answer, it's not as thorough as it should be. So I asked the question again, what builds a leader's team? Answer, your perspective of conflicts. It's how you see it. You got to look at this thing in a certain way. And as a leader that aspires to greater levels of success and productivity and effectiveness and healthy teams that you serve on or lead, you have to have a perspective that is very clear. Jesus, watch what he did. Jesus, when everyone came to Capernaum, most scholars agree that it was the home of Simon Peter and his brother Andrew. In first century Middle Eastern society, they often lived in communal ways, in communal settings. Peter and Andrew living together with their wives and their children. Jesus gets to their home there in Capernaum. He waits until everybody gets settled. But he gives us the perspective based on how he tackles this problem, that there are two perspectives when you deal with problems. You have perpetual problems or you have solvable problems. But you have to be able to have the right perspective, because if you're going to build your team, you need to know how to look at the conflict that's in front of you. Is this a perpetual conflict, an ongoing conflict? You may say, well, what's an ongoing conflict? Well, an ongoing conflict is the fact that men and women are different. That's an example. We're different. And our gender differences makes us oftentimes see things differently. But we'll always see things differently. Because this is how we've been wired to see things. And so personality also makes us see things differently. And our personality, it's never going to change. There are four classical personality types. You have the choleric, you have the melancholy, you have the phlegmatic, you have the sanguine. They're different. My personality is a classical choleric. You might say, what does that mean? A classical choleric, have you ever used a DISC profile or Myers-Briggs assessment? Well, the DISC profile, I'm the high D. D means dominance. God wired me from birth. Makes me feel like I'm in charge, even if I'm not in charge. I walk into a place, I think I'm the boss, even if I'm not the boss. It's just wired that way. Even when I was this high. 4 of us siblings in the Island household. When it was trouble or crisis or kids did something, I was always the spokesperson. Stand up, I stand forward. I'm the third one. Didn't matter. I'll just tell them what has to be done. Don't worry about mom and dad. I'll take care of it. And they said, thank you, David. You know, listen, I'm just wired that way. Now, the idea is that in some settings there's a conflict, because that's a personality type. But that's a perpetual problem. Now, if I deal with a sanguine is a person, they're happy-go-lucky, everything's fine, they're just smiling, they're exuberant, they're bubbly, and they're always bubbly. And so when I get around the sanguine, I'm saying, what's your problem? Did you give me my stuff? I need my stuff. They're smiling, I didn't get to your stuff. I was just happy. But they don't know the love language of a choleric is. It's not about touching and feeling. I don't need gifts. My love language is productivity. Do what I ask you to do. Give me my stuff, I feel loved. No stuff, I don't feel loved. I'm easy to please, but I'm showing you that becomes a perpetual problem. For some sanguine, it's different. But I have to understand that we're so different that I have to know how to work with a sanguine and not crush them. They have to work with me and not crush me. And we have to work on the same team together. And that's part of growth. And that's a perpetual thing that we work with. This problem here in the text was not a perpetual one. Had very little to do with personality or gender. It wasn't an issue of that. The issue here was a solvable problem. There are lots of problems that are solvable. For example, there's some people that when you start talking, they start talking, always interrupting you. You never get a word in. That's a solvable problem. I remember I was counseling this couple. The wife just kept on. Man, she never allowed the husband to say a word. And so you can just see a rage. His shade turning all kinds. Even he was black, but you can see he was red. He was turning all kinds of shades. He was just angry. And so he couldn't say anything. The wife just kept on talking. and never gave him a chance. He said something, she wants to correct, say it a different way, say it a better way, use better words, bigger words. And so I saw this hourglass sitting on my desk. I just got up from my conference room table, and I went over to the desk, I grabbed the hourglass, and I put it right on the table, and I had the sand on the upper part, and it was rolling down. I said to the lady, I said, from now on, ma'am, whenever you see the sand in the top part of the hourglass, as it's rolling down, that's your time to talk. And I put it there, and so it just rolled a talk, but as soon as the sand empties out, shut up. Then I flip it over, then I want your husband to speak. And then as the sand rolls out, then you can respond to what he said. You should have seen her struggle when it was his turn, that sand. She was, ooh, 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 ooh. And then I gifted them with that hourglass. So after the session ended, I said, please, this is my gift to you. Take it home, and don't speak to each other without that hourglass for the next month. I want to say some things to you, sweetheart. Get the hourglass. Oh, you can't. Solve problems could be that. An example of a solve problem is punctuality. That's a solve problem. Some people are late to meetings. They're late every time. They get late to work day after day. Then they get late to the meeting at work, even if it's in their office. They'll even become late to church. I see some of them now. But they're so regular in their lateness. I remember when I first came to the Lord, I was in grad school, didn't have a car, and so this lady would pick me up to go to church. The church was half an hour away from my dorm. I went to Stevens Institute of Technology, and so she would say, David, I'm going to pick you up at 10:15. You know, church starts at 11. I said, yep. 10:15, and it takes half an hour to drive from where I pick you up to church. I said, good. And if you know me, I'm not there 10:15. I'm there 10 after 10, the latest. So I'm standing there waiting, 10 after 10. 10:15 comes, she's not there. 10:30, she's not there. 10:45, she's not there. 10:50, she's just rolling up. This happened every single week. My hair was sticking up like Don King. I mean, when it rained, it just recoiled. I mean, I was angry. And then the fact is that what made it even worse, her personality was sanguine. So when I opened the car door, she had worship music going on, and she's dancing, and she sees me. I'm so angry, you can see rage in my eyes. My eyes are bloodshot at that point. I can't worship the Lord. I'm too mad to worship God. And so she's there dancing, and her little boy's in the back seat. He's saying, hi, Brother David. And I'm saying hi under my breath. And then she's saying, hey, how are you, brother? And she's playing that worship music. I'm angry. I don't have a ride, so I can't say anything. How can you fuss at someone who's your ride? But they're habitually late. And when I finally calmed down, I remember the time I said to her, I said, why are you always late? And would you believe, to her defense, she said, after she gave me a litany of things, she said, I was even born late. And she meant it. And you know what happened? Fast forward a year later, she gets married to a guy who was a former drill sergeant in the Marines. Oh, he solved that problem. He solved that problem. I want you to see there's some problems that are perpetual, and then there's solvable ones. And so the perspective that Jesus had of the conflict, I'm answering the question, how does a leader build the team? Answer, through the conflicts. Second answer, the perspective of the conflict. And so what Jesus was showing us here is that his perspective was that I'm going to choose to solve this. He waited for them to come into the house, went through the normal rituals of first century individuals living in Middle Eastern society, dusty, dirty roads. You enter into someone's home, your feet are washed to get the grime, the grit, the dirt off. You sit down, and you get yourself comfortable. You go through the niceties of the social interaction. How are you? How are the kids? How are the family? Jesus didn't interrupt any of those things. He himself sat down. I want you now to bring you to the third answer of the question. Question, what builds a leader's team? Answer, the conflicts. Second answer, your perspective of conflicts. Jesus was leveraging the conflict because there are a lot of benefits here. He had to reaffirm the team. He had to ensure that these leaders did not become dictatorial or tyrannical in their behavior, that they understood that in the kingdom of God, leadership style is about service and love, and not about being bossy and autocratic and dictatorial. Jesus was going to then teach them conflict resolution skills, which leads to my third answer. Question, what builds a leader's team? Answer, your ability to resolve conflicts. Every one of us in this room and those watching online, the conflicts that you're in right now, there is this awesome opportunity. If you know how to resolve them, it can launch you into a whole new level of leadership. It can launch you into a whole new level of effectiveness. You can make more money. The potential of even winning bigger, stronger, more effective team members to you, because people are watching you to see how you solve the present problem in front of you, and how you solve that dictates the kinds of gifted people that can come your way, because you know how to deal with people no matter where they are and what level of experience they may have. I want you to see there are high stakes here. May I paint for you a method of how you can solve conflicts, because oftentimes I've known that people don't have any conflict resolution skills that are clear. But there are 4 typical conflict resolution skills that can work in every setting, be it the home, the job, the church, the broader community. 4 conflict resolution skills, and Jesus is employing them here. And so, I want to put this little graphic on the screen in front of you. Think about it this way. Separate yourself into 2 compartments. The head, your head, and your heart. 2 of the skills require your head. That is, step 1, integrity. Step 2, taking responsibility. It requires your thinking, your head. Steps 3 and 4 requires your heart. Forgiveness, compassion, or peacemaking, or pursuing peace requires the heart. I don't care what kind of team it is. Whether it's a team where you're serving on the U.S. Pentagon with military men and military women, or you're serving in a daycare center with teachers, or with parents that are irate sometimes because their little Johnny can't do anything wrong, and you have to deal with a conflict. These same 4 steps, or it's a marital conflict, these same 4 steps can be applied in those settings. So I want you to understand how these steps work. Step 1 is a matter of integrity. You value what's right. You deal with honesty. You walk the talk. You don't just talk the talk, you walk the talk. And so it all stems down to the point of glorifying God. When I personally choose, David Ireland, I don't care what the problem is, what the conflict is. If my predisposition based on my intellect, my head tells me, David, use your head, model integrity, even when it hurts you. Even when the conflict is severe, even when the issues are dark and dingy and tough, practice integrity. Glorify God in this. Can you glorify God even when it's an ugly situation? I want you to see that, sir. I want you to see that, ma'am. You have your integrity. Integrity is about an integrated life that's the underpinning of the values. It works its way throughout every area. You can't just say this is business and then this is church. No, you can't separate and fragment and compartmentalize. You have to say, I'm a child of God. And whether I work as a CEO or I work as someone who is a pastor, the integrity is integrity. And so, you got to glorify God. A desire to glorify God allows you to take personal control of your emotions and actions, vital practices to safeguard the welfare of the team. And sometimes you may say, well, I don't work with people that glorify God, but they do have the similar values, many people. They want to make sure that they maintain integrity. They want to make sure that they maintain this cohesiveness of the team. They don't want to fragment the team. They want the team to make money and be productive and be effective. Hold them accountable to values and emotions as befitting of a team that's healthy. In January, I was coming back from Nigeria, and I had to actually wait in the airport for about 3 hours for the plane, though it was on a tarmac. And so we're late, we're running late. I don't know what the problem was, but the plane's sitting there. Finally, it was time to board the plane. Keep in mind, we're waiting 3 hours. Get on the plane, it's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, literally. Within 5 minutes, my entire shirt wet from top to bottom. Wet with perspiration. People were angry. One guy could not control himself. He just yelled out at the top of his voice, "Turn on the air! I'm dying!" And we just looked and smiled because he said what we all wanted to say. He said it. You ever been around people like that? They just speak their mind. They don't care. He just said it. But he didn't just stop there. He just got and became more incensed and irate. Turn on the air now. Flight attendants walking by him. Turn on the air. And they ignored him. They just looked. They didn't say anything. Then the captain got on the intercom and said, ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the heat, but because the engine that controls the air conditioner is broken, we cannot put on the air now. But when the main engine for the airplane comes on, once all the doors are closed, passengers are seated, the air will also come on. The guy's irate passenger, he listened, and he still got crazy. He said, I'm dying. Turn on the air now. I don't care. Turn on the air. And give me some water. Give us water. Now, he's there. He's about 20 feet from me. I'm looking at him. His face is going through all contortions as he's angry. He's standing up. And then all of a sudden, a lady 20 feet ahead of us jumped up and said, sir, there are children on the plane. And so the words hit him. And I looked at him. He's processing it now. He's struggling. If I act out, kids will think that this is how you're supposed to behave. I can't act out, but I'm frustrated. I'm mad. And you could see him just frustrated. He's struggling with the value words that was thrown at him in a second. That's what Jesus did. There in that home, he took one of the little children of the home. The little kid stood there. Then Jesus picked him up in his arms. And you know, little kids are all cute. Jesus is holding me. They're probably looking at the other kid. Hey, he's holding me. He's smiling. And Jesus says that I want you, teaching his disciples, to be like a little child smiling. Cheshire grin, smiling. Jesus using him as an object lesson, which is saying, in essence, have values befitting of children. Be impressionable. Be pliable. They're not looking to be autocratic and dictatorial and dogmatic and usurping and looking and jockeying for ranking and positions. Look how innocent the child is, smiling. And Jesus is teaching us that when it comes to the idea of conflict resolution skills, you have to be able to, as the scripture says, practice integrity. Second thing we must do is take responsibility. Admit your faults and mistakes. Resolve conflicts for the common good. See, it's not all about you, it's about the team. And the strength of the team is that each person can provide the strength of gifting that they have and contribute it to the welfare of the team. But if you never admit weakness or accept and acknowledge your faux pas publicly, which is so important because many times you can disarm someone when you acknowledge that you have weaknesses and you have been contributing to the conflict of the team by your weakness or your personality. There are times when we have these meetings, I have to walk out of the room because I don't want to influence the group, and I communicate to them afterwards that I stepped out of the room because I know my personality, that I don't want to take over something. I want each of you to feel the freedom. And sometimes I'll step out, other times I'll sit and listen, but I step out so you can feel the freedom to speak. That is maybe a Christ Church meeting. And I'm saying that because I'm admitting that even my personality may cause conflict. Wave at me if you're still with me. I want you to see that you have to acknowledge the whole idea of conflict resolution skills and use them. When I say, for example, take responsibility, another way of putting it is this way. In Luke 6, verse 41, Jesus said, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your eye? In other words, Jesus is saying that every one of you has a problem also, but don't make your brother's problem be supersized and yours be minuscule. Take the plank. What do you mean a plank? 2x4. Take it out of your eye and let the sawdust remain there, or don't deal with it so strongly because, in other words, take responsibility. Step 3 deals with the heart. It's where forgiveness must be broached. And so in this area, healthy confrontation, it should not turn accusatory. Notice Jesus. He waited until everyone was comfortable in the home. Then the scripture says in verse 35, sitting down, Jesus called the 12. So the Bible helps us understand much of the culture of that day when you see Jesus always teaching from a seated position. Rabbis taught from a seated position. So he sat down, signaling, lesson time, guys. I'm not going to be scolding. I'm not going to be punitive in my words. I'm not going to be accusatory. Rather, I'll be instructional. Jesus sat down and began to teach them about team building by letting them know that you have to be able to know when to confront something. He didn't wait until they just came in the house. He waited for everybody to calm down, get their feet washed, sit and relax a moment. So you must know the same area when you're dealing with forgiveness and you have to have a very pointed conversation with someone or a delicate conversation with someone. You must know when to confront. I've learned over the years, I confront when the offense is dishonoring God. I confront when the offense is damaging to the team's culture and values. I confront when the offense is destructive to me personally in terms of my being or that of others. I confront when the infraction is crippling to the overall effectiveness and productivity and even the profitability of the team. We also must know how to confront. Choose a time and place that's conducive to a fruitful conversation. Don't confront in the wrong place. Don't confront out in public. Don't confront in the car while you're driving. Don't confront, and particularly when you're driving to church, don't choose that time. And then you come into church and smile, praise the Lord, praise Him, brother. No, you can't confront that way. And if you have, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the person next to you. Don't do that. Choose, a right timing as Jesus did. And listen responsibly, allowing that person to give feedback and their perspective. You'll be so surprised, the benefit. The step 4 of confronting also deals with the heart or conflict resolution. And it's dealing with compassion. It's really another way of saying pursue peace. The Bible teaches that peacemaking and pursuing peace is a wonderful way you demonstrate compassion. What you realize is Jesus held this little child in His arms is that as innocent as this child is, he's flawed, but yet you still love him. As innocent as this child is, he has needs to learn things. Same way you must hold people on your team that way. Hold them in the sense of saying they're flawed as I'm flawed. They're learning as I'm learning. And when you practice compassion, it's a wonderful thing that helps to build a strong team. See, ladies and gentlemen, I've learned this, that team building and teamwork is essential to effectiveness in leadership. I love this Zambian proverb. It says this: when you run alone, you run fast. But when you run together, you run far. Tell me, do you want to run fast and then teeter out? Or do you want to be able to run far? Life is a marathon, and leadership is a marathon. It's not a 60-yard dash. It's a marathon. And so you have to learn how to get along with people. And so I taught you today how leaders build their team. The conflict, the perspective of the conflict, and knowing how to resolve conflicts. May I pray with you? Let's stand together. Calling every man, every woman, every young person in this congregation, I need you to be a warrior for God.